In a single evening, he lost his wife, his marriage, and the illusion that love could withstand anything. They were sitting at the same table where she once said yes, only now, another man sat beside her, and on her lips played the phrase, "We're in an open marriage now. Deal with it." No tears, no drama, no shattered plates. He simply stood up and walked away. But it was in that silence that the unraveling began. Not his, but hers. He didn't beg, didn't seek revenge. He started acting, with a clear mind and calculated steps. Reevaluation, reset. The return of self-respect. Every message she sent, a screenshot. Every word, a piece of evidence. And behind the scenes, a lawyer, a friend, a sister, her parents. Everything she thought she controlled was slowly, steadily falling apart. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. At 34, the memory of that night still weighs on me like a boulder, sitting across from Emily, my wife of 6 years, at the same restaurant where I'd once asked her to marry me. But this time, she wasn't alone. She had brought Dominic, a colleague of hers, along. Casually, she intertwined her fingers with his and announced, "We're in an open marriage now. You'll just have to accept it." I sat frozen, waiting for the punchline that never came. Only a month before, we'd been planning for children, scrolling through listings in family-friendly neighborhoods. How had we spiraled from dreaming of a future together to this nightmare? Emily didn't give me the chance to gather my thoughts. "This isn't up for debate," she said curtly, frustrated by my silence. "We've been together for months," she added flatly, her hand still clutching Dominic's. "I'm not ending it. You can either deal with it or not." She left the threat hanging ominously in the air. Dominic shifted awkwardly but didn't pull away from her. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. Instead, I quietly excused myself, saying I needed the restroom, and once out of sight, I called my best friend, Matthew. "She brought the guy she's cheating with to our anniversary dinner," I told him when he answered. My voice felt hollow, disturbingly steady. "You serious?" Matthew burst out. "You want to crash at my place tonight?" "Yeah," I replied. "I'm going to settle the check and walk out. Then I'll start protecting myself." When I returned to the table, they were laughing together, heads almost touching like giddy teenagers. I caught the server's attention, handed him my card, and paid without a word. "That's it?" Emily said, astonished, like she expected fireworks. "You're not even going to react?" I looked at her, barely recognizing the woman in front of me. "Happy anniversary," I said, signing the receipt. Without another glance, I walked away. Later that night, after reaching Matthew's house, I transferred half of our jointly held funds into a private account, one she didn't know about. I wasn't stealing. I was safeguarding what belonged to me. I had opened that account years ago after inheriting money from my grandfather. Emily had always brushed off financial matters, joking, "That's why I married someone who understands numbers." At dawn, while she was still asleep, I went back to our house to grab my essentials. Her phone was on the nightstand, unlocked. I gave in to temptation. Scrolling through their messages, I found a sickening archive going back 4 months. Flirtatious texts, intimate photos, and worst of all, conversations about me. "Think he suspects anything?" Dominic had asked once. "Not even a little. He's as clueless as ever," Emily had responded. "And if he refuses?" Dominic wondered. "He won't. He's weak. Plus, everything's in my name. He needs me more than I need him," she had said. That was a lie. True, her parents had helped put the house in her name, but every mortgage payment and renovation since had been a shared expense. I screenshotted every damning message, sent them to myself, and wiped them clean off her device. Before leaving, I checked her laptop, and there it was, a reservation confirmation for a romantic weekend getaway. Booked for the same weekend we were supposed to be celebrating our anniversary. By 9 in the morning, I had hired a sharp, no-nonsense divorce attorney named Chloe and officially filed the paperwork. Half an hour later, Emily began bombarding my phone with frantic messages. "Where's the money? What did you do? You can't do this." I didn't respond. Instead, I sent everything to Chloe, powered down my phone, and left her to scream into the silence. I was finished listening. Update 1. It's been 7 days since the night Matthew now calls the dinner. I've been living on his pull-out couch, which honestly beats sharing a bed with someone who stabbed me in the back. The morning after everything blew up, Emily showed up pounding on Matthew's front door. When he finally answered, she tried to push her way in. "Where is he?" she barked. "He emptied our accounts. That's illegal." Matthew didn't budge. "It's not illegal to move his share," he said coolly, "and he's not here." In truth, I was tucked away in the guest bedroom, listening. "Tell him to stop acting like a child," she said, trying to sound professional. "We can settle this like adults." Matthew wasn't having it. "You mean like you did when you blindsided him with your boyfriend at your anniversary dinner?" He shot back. I heard her gasp sharply, caught off guard. "Yeah," Matthew said. "He told me everything. Now get off my porch before you wake up my kids." Later that afternoon, I had another meeting with Chloe. She smiled as she scrolled through the evidence. The messages didn't just confirm the affair, they proved Emily had been plotting to corner me financially. "She thinks the house shields her," Chloe explained. "But because you've contributed to the mortgage and renovations over 6 years, we can argue it's marital property, despite the title." As we spoke, a new text popped up, from an unknown number. "This is Dominic. We need to talk." I showed it to Chloe, who recommended I ignore him. But curiosity got the better of me. When I replied, Dominic messaged, "Emily's falling apart. She says you stole everything and won't even talk to her. If you give her the money back, maybe you two can fix things." It always came back to the money. Typical. I took a screenshot of their chat about the cabin they booked, using our shared credit card, and attached a note. Was this supposed to be for our plans? No reply. That evening, Emily's sister, Victoria, gave me a call. Victoria and I had always gotten along, and she sounded truly upset. "Emily said you lost it when she suggested opening the marriage," she told me. "She claims you emptied your accounts and disappeared." I couldn't help but laugh. "Is that the story she's telling everyone?" I asked. "Did she also mention inviting her boyfriend to our anniversary dinner? Or that they've been sleeping together for months?" The other end of the line went silent. I continued. "Ask her about Dominic, the guy from her office. Ask about the cabin they paid for with our joint card." Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper. "Oh my God. She's been telling everyone you had a breakdown because she only suggested an open relationship." "Well," I said, "now you know the truth. Feel free to pass it along to her parents, too." And Victoria did exactly that. By the next morning, Emily's parents had both called to personally apologize for their daughter's actions. Her father, a man who had always been distant, if polite, sounded emotional, something I had never heard before. "We didn't raise her to behave this way," he said. "No matter what happens between you two, please know we don't condone any of this." The words hit harder than I expected. I had always felt like an outsider in her family, never quite good enough for their bright, ambitious daughter. As everything came crashing down, Emily changed tactics. She showed up at my work, causing such a disruption that security had to escort her out. She spammed my inbox with a flood of emails, swinging between threats and tearful apologies. When that failed, she turned to smearing my name, telling anyone who would listen that I was controlling and abusive. Thankfully, the people who truly mattered saw through her lies. Those who didn't, they weren't real friends to begin with. Meanwhile, Dominic all but disappeared. According to Matthew's wife, who also worked at Emily's firm, Dominic had been shuffled into another department and was keeping a very low profile. Apparently, dating someone going through a messy divorce wasn't nearly as thrilling as sneaking around behind their spouse's back. As for me, I focused on moving the divorce along. I kept diligent records, every email, every text, every unannounced visit. My most organized client ever, joked Chloe, my attorney. Honestly, it was the first compliment I'd received in a long time. Update 2. About 3 weeks later, everything shifted dramatically. After being served divorce papers, I expected Emily to explode. Instead, there was nothing. 3 days of complete silence. Then, an email landed in my inbox from her personal account. Subject: I'm sorry. The body of the email read, I acted horribly. I won't contest the divorce or your terms. I just ask that you don't submit the text messages as evidence. My career wouldn't survive it. Dominic is out of the picture. I made a huge mistake. Without hesitation, I forwarded the email to Chloe. She called me almost immediately. This stinks, she said. She's trapped and trying to minimize the fallout. Don't agree to anything. Chloe was right, as usual. The very next day, Emily's lawyer sent over a proposed settlement, one outrageously skewed in her favor. She wanted the house, the bulk of our financial assets, and she expected me to assume most of our shared debts. She's completely detached from reality, Chloe said dryly. We'll send back a fact-based counteroffer. Chloe carefully outlined my contributions to the house, even though it was only in Emily's name, highlighted the support I had given her through law school, and detailed her financial misconduct. 2 days later, a much more reasonable offer arrived. It still leaned a bit in her favor, but was far closer to fair. I almost signed just to be done with it, but Chloe shook her head. Something's off. Let me do a little digging. Chloe's investigation led to a casual conversation with a paralegal she knew at Emily's firm, and what she found changed everything. Dominic's not just a coworker, Chloe told me. He's the nephew of one of the senior partners. The firm had strict policies against relationships involving leadership's relatives, and suddenly, Emily's frantic desire to keep those messages secret made perfect sense. Public exposure would destroy her career. Armed with that knowledge, Chloe proposed a bold new deal. I would buy out Emily's share of the house at fair market value, we would evenly divide our remaining assets, and each of us would take responsibility for our own debts. In exchange, I would sign a confidentiality agreement preventing me from discussing the specifics of our divorce. Emily's attorney accepted the terms almost immediately. Around the same time, Victoria reached out, asking if we could meet up. When we sat down over coffee, her first words were, I owe you an apology. She pulled out her phone and showed me old text messages between herself and Emily, conversations from 2 years prior. In them, Emily confessed she felt trapped in our marriage and wondered if there was something better waiting for her. I told her she needed to talk to you, Victoria said heavily. But instead, she started working late more and more. I think that's when Dominic came into the picture. She paused, took a breath. Emily's been telling people you ambushed her, cleared out the accounts and blindsided her with divorce, that you controlled her money, and that's why she had to find comfort elsewhere. Victoria placed her phone on the table between us. These texts prove otherwise, she said firmly, and if you need me to testify, I will. I stared at her, stunned. Why are you doing this? I asked. Victoria looked down at her hands before answering. Because what she did to you was wrong, and because she did something similar to her college boyfriend. I covered for her back then. I'm not covering for her now. I knew I couldn't survive another round of it. The next day, Chloe called with surprising news. Emily had asked to meet. Just the two of us, in a public place. Every instinct in me screamed to say no, but in the end, curiosity overpowered caution. I agreed to see her at a cafe not far from Matthew's apartment. When Emily showed up, she barely resembled the confident, polished attorney I had once married. Her hair was haphazardly tied back, her face bare of makeup, the dark circles under her eyes stark. Thanks for agreeing to this, she said quietly. I didn't respond, simply waited. Everything's gone, she confessed. Dominic's been transferred to Seattle. My parents barely look me in the eye. Victoria won't return my texts. She hesitated, maybe expecting some reaction. I gave her nothing. The firm partners, they're starting to catch on that something's off, she continued. I sat in silence. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said, her voice unsteady. I need to know. How are you so calm? Why aren't you yelling at me? Why don't you hate me? She pushed, almost desperate. I thought it over carefully before answering. Getting angry would mean I still care, I said at last. And the truth was, I didn't. Not anymore. She flinched as though I had slapped her. The divorce will be finalized soon, I added. It's a fair deal. We'll both have what we need to move forward. Starting fresh, I said aloud. She whispered back, without me. You made that choice the night at Vincenzo's, I reminded her. I'm just living with it. Her tears started falling then, silent and steady. For a moment, an old instinct to comfort her stirred in me, but I let it die. I'm sorry, she sobbed out. I know that doesn't change anything, but I mean it. I gave her a small nod, stood up, and walked away. That was the real end of our story. 6 months after that catastrophic anniversary dinner, today I signed the final divorce papers. It's officially over now. The settlement held as we agreed. I kept the house, though I sold it, too many memories, got a fair portion of the finances, and the confidentiality clause remained intact. Emily kept her job at the firm, though from what I hear, her chances at partnership have vanished. Play reckless games, win reckless prizes. As for me, I'm doing far better than I would have believed. My new apartment already feels like home. It even has a little balcony where I'm growing cherry tomatoes and herbs. I've reconnected with old friends I'd lost during my marriage. It's obvious now how Emily had quietly maneuvered certain people, especially women she felt threatened by, out of my life. The irony isn't lost on me, considering how everything ended. On the topic of irony, I heard Dominic tried to patch things up with Emily after the divorce finalized. She turned him down flat. Victoria told me Emily told him he was only ever a symptom of her unhappiness, not the cure. Just last week, I ran into Emily's dad at the hardware store. He seemed genuinely glad to see me, asked about my work, my new place. Before we said goodbye, he gripped my shoulder and left me with a line I won't forget. Some people spend their whole lives chasing what they think they want, and destroy what they actually need. Don't be that person. I promised him I wouldn't. Everything, the heartbreak, the betrayal, forced me to reevaluate my life. What I want, what I'll never accept again, what I truly deserve. I've started dating again. Nothing serious yet. There's a woman in my building, Nina, who shares my obsession with plants. We've had coffee a few times. She laughs at my dumb jokes and never once checks her phone when we talk. Little things. But now I understand those are the foundation of real respect. Sometimes my mind drifts back to that night at Vincenzo's, Emily gripping Dominic's hand, daring me to just swallow it. The nerve, believing I would take whatever scraps of marriage she decided to offer. Confident I needed her more than she ever needed me. To be fair, I had taught her to think that way. I had spent our marriage bending over backwards, always putting her needs first, always giving in. In trying to be the best husband possible, I had shown her I didn't value myself enough to say no. That's the greatest lesson I'm carrying forward. Kindness doesn't mean allowing yourself to be walked on. Forgiveness doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. And sometimes the strongest answer to betrayal is simply walking away, without making a scene. Yesterday, a small package from Emily showed up at my door. Inside was my grandfather's watch, something I had thought lost in the move. A brief note accompanied it. Found this in my jewelry box. I know it meant a lot to you. Take care. No drama, no apologies, just the quiet return of something that had always belonged to me. As for the accounts that started all this mess, they were restored during the settlement. I hadn't stolen a penny. I had simply protected what was mine until the dust settled. I still have all the screenshots saved safely in the cloud, not to use against anyone, but as a personal reminder. Trust your instincts, know your worth, and never stay somewhere you're not respected. Because sometimes, when someone tells you to deal with it, the strongest thing you can say is, "No, I won't." This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. A simple, just a party with friends, turned out to be a trap laced with fingerprints from the past, ones she didn't even try to wipe away. One glance, one brief reply, and everything clicked into place. No more illusions, just the realization. The love he'd protected for 6 years, she had discarded long ago. But the game wasn't over. As she walked out the door, certain he'd be there waiting, he had already begun to move. Not out of rage, but with cold resolve. And when her phone began to fill with questions, she wasn't the one asking them. Now she was waiting for answers, and he stayed silent. Because for the first time in a long while, silence was his ally. And within it, he became someone she no longer recognized. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So let's get started. I couldn't tell you the precise instant Lana became a stranger to me. Maybe it was a gradual fading, tiny, nearly invisible changes I refused to acknowledge because doing so meant facing a truth I wasn't ready for. Or perhaps that side of her had always existed, quietly biding its time until it had a reason to emerge. Regardless, I didn't find out about the party until she casually brought it up. It was a Thursday evening. The air was thick with the scent of simmering tomato sauce, the kind that felt like home. It was a comfort I clung to. Lana, however, barely touched her plate. She was absorbed in her phone, her face lit by its screen, a small, secretive smile playing on her lips. I watched her for a moment before breaking the silence. "What's so interesting?" She looked up as though she'd forgotten I was there. "Melanie's throwing a party this weekend," she said. Her voice was light, unbothered. That, in itself, wasn't unusual. Her college friends always seemed to find an excuse to celebrate. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice. But there was something about the way she didn't quite meet my eyes that made my chest tighten. "Who's going?" I asked, casually spinning my fork between my fingers. She hesitated, a fraction of a second, but it was enough. "The usual group," she answered. I let the utensil rest on the table. "Does that include him?" Her jaw tensed just slightly. That was all I needed. "He's part of the circle," she replied, voice clipped and rehearsed as if she'd run this conversation through her head already. Her ex, the one she'd bounced back to too many times before I ever came along. This wasn't about insecurity. I knew the kind of man he was. The type who thrived on the idea that he still held power over her. And part of me always feared that she never fully broke free of that spell. "You haven't mentioned him in a while," I said, careful to keep my tone neutral. She exhaled sharply and pushed her plate aside. "Because I knew you'd turn it into something it's not." "I'm not accusing you," I said evenly. "I'm just wondering why all of a sudden you're eager to go to his party." Her arms crossed, her face hardening. "I'm allowed to spend time with my friends, Spencer." "That's not what I'm disputing." Could have fooled me. The words landed with force, but it wasn't the edge in her voice that cut deepest. It was the emptiness in her eyes. Not anger, not frustration, indifference. That hit harder than anything else. It wasn't about the fight. It was about how far away she already felt, like she'd stepped outside of this relationship long before this conversation began. That's when it dawned on me. This wasn't about a party. It was about testing boundaries, seeing how far she could go before I reacted. I took a breath, slow and deliberate. "So you're going, whether I'm okay with it or not?" She lifted her chin, resolute. "Yes." No hesitation, no reassurance, just that cold, definitive word. Something inside me shifted, quiet and deep, something I couldn't quite name. But I nodded. "All right." She looked at me, caught off guard by the lack of resistance. "That's it? All right?" I forced a weak smile. "Have a good time." For the first time that night she looked uncertain, and rightly so. What she thought she'd find at that party wasn't waiting for her. She left without looking back. I stood at the window, watching her walk down the driveway, her silhouette shrinking with each step, heels clicking like punctuation marks in the silence. There was no pause in her stride, no last glance. It was clear she had made this decision long ago. When her car finally disappeared around the corner, the stillness left behind was suffocating. I leaned against the counter, the cool surface grounding me in a world that suddenly felt unfamiliar. But if I was honest with myself, I knew I'd lost her long before this night. This was only the moment I stopped pretending otherwise. I ran a hand over my face, my mind racing to all the signs I'd dismissed. The emotional withdrawal, the laughter at messages I wasn't part of, the way she dressed with such care on nights I wasn't included. She thought I didn't notice, but I did. I just kept hoping I was mistaken, that maybe, deep down, she still remembered who we used to be, what we once shared before the cracks spread too far. But she didn't look back. She gathered her things, put on her makeup, and walked out like none of it mattered anymore. Straight into the arms of someone who once claimed her heart, and maybe never truly let go. The weight of it settled in my chest, but I didn't let it break me. I straightened up and stepped into the living room. The lamp cast long, thin shadows across the walls. Everything looked the same, but the room felt foreign. On the shelf, our wedding photos sat undisturbed, me in a tailored suit, her in a flowing white dress, both of us smiling like we owned the world. I picked up one frame, tracing the glass with my thumb. 6 years. 6 years of shared routines, whispered conversations, spontaneous trips, and quiet comfort. 6 years of believing we were stronger than anything. Now I stood alone, clutching a frozen fragment of a life that no longer felt like mine. 6 years of clinging to something that was clearly unraveling before my eyes. I placed the photo frame down, this time with the glass side facing the table. I couldn't bear to see it again. Instead, I reached for my phone. A new thought was already solidifying. If Lana was willing to shift the boundaries, then so was I. I wasn't going to stay behind, playing the character she had written for me, the fool, the pushover. Not tonight. Tonight, she would remember exactly what she let go. The drive was quick, no more than 10 minutes. I didn't even have to consider the destination. My body already knew where to go. The bar's flickering neon sign hummed quietly as I turned into the lot. I'd been here before, what felt like a lifetime ago. Before the vows, before the sacrifices, before I lost myself trying to hold on to someone who had already stopped seeing me. I stepped inside and was immediately hit with the familiar chaos, music, laughter, overlapping conversations. The place was alive, as I expected it would be on a Friday night. Glasses clinked, people leaned into each other's joy, and everything felt vivid and immediate. That's what I needed. Presence. I found a seat at the bar and caught the bartender's eye. Carmen looked up, smirking as she ran a rag across the counter. "Well, look who decided to come out of retirement," she joked. "Didn't think we were your crowd anymore?" I gave a quiet laugh. "It's been a while." She raised an eyebrow. "And yet, here you are." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I picked up the drink she slid toward me, took a slow sip, and let the burn spread through my chest. Yes, I was here. And for once, I wasn't waiting. I wasn't hoping. I wasn't at home, imagining Lana sipping wine in some too familiar room, trading old jokes with someone she used to love, and still might. That chapter was closed, but just as I started to feel grounded in that truth, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, expecting maybe a message from a friend. But no, it was her. Not a call, a text. "Where are you?" I leaned back, letting the glass rotate between my fingers. She'd walked out earlier without even looking back, and now she was checking in? Interesting. I didn't type anything. Not yet. Something told me the night was far from over. I stared at the message, letting it linger like smoke in the air. "Where are you?" It wasn't just about location. It was a crack in her certainty. She had left with the belief that I'd be home, waiting, predictable. But now she wasn't so sure. I could see it. Her pacing, scanning the party, assuming I'd still be exactly where she left me. But not tonight. I slid my phone back into my pocket and raised my glass, unrushed. If she wanted to know, she could wait. Carmen leaned a bit closer, eyes twinkling with curiosity. "That look. Someone send you something juicy?" I laughed, twirling what was left of my drink. "Something like that." She narrowed her eyes. "Is this about your ex?" I lifted an eyebrow. "Sort of. Give it a minute." She let out a low whistle. "This should be fun." I didn't respond. I just smiled quietly and took another sip. This wasn't about punishing Lana. It was about enjoying the silence for once. About finally feeling like I wasn't being dragged behind the wheel. I was holding it. 20 minutes later, another text came through. "Are you home?" I let out a low chuckle. Home? Not even close. But the fact that she thought I might be was almost sweet. I imagined her again, still at that party, maybe in the kitchen, her phone in one hand and a drink in the other. Was she uncertain now? Regretting it? Or just annoyed that I wasn't sticking to the script? Still, I stayed silent. Instead, I stood up, loosened my shoulders, and stepped outside. The chill hit me as I walked to my car. I wasn't drunk, just relaxed, clear. And I had a direction now. If this was a game, I was officially playing. I didn't rush. Took the long way home. Even stopped for gas, though I didn't need to. When I finally pulled into the driveway, another message lit up my screen. "Are you ignoring me?" I sat for a moment, headlights washing over the house. Then I replied, "No. Just busy." Simple, vague, enough to gnaw at her a bit. Sure enough, the typing bubbles popped up, then vanished, then came back again. I grinned. She was thinking. Perfect. A moment later, her next message appeared. Busy with what? There it was. The break in the pattern. It had been a while since Lana was left without answers. Now, she was the one in the waiting seat. I could have spelled everything out, where I'd been, what I was doing, shown her that she wasn't the only one who could vanish without warning or explanation. But I chose silence instead. I turned off my phone, stepped out of the car, and walked into the house. Let her sit with the questions for once. Inside, the living room was cloaked in dimness, the only light a weak amber cast from the street lamp slipping through the blinds. The air was thick with stillness, dense and unmoving. I stood there in the doorway for a beat, letting it soak in, the quiet, the aftermath, the weight of the evening. There was no anger in me, no sorrow either, just closure. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. My phone sat next to me, face down and silent. No missed calls, no messages, nothing. And that was fine. Because for once, she was the one asking questions. I moved through my evening slowly, swapped out my shirt, brushed my teeth, rolled my shoulders loose. My body felt relaxed, my thoughts disarmingly focused. After everything Lana had done to chip away at my self-assurance, all the moments she'd planted doubt in me, she was finally the one uncertain. I slid into bed, staring at the ceiling. Her side of the bed was empty and cold. But it didn't bother me tonight. She'd made her decisions. Now she had to face them. 2:37 a.m. The hum of my phone on the nightstand stirred me from sleep. It took a moment for my mind to catch up. The room was still dark, lit only by the screen's soft glow painting pale streaks across the walls. I blinked, reached over, and read the name. Lana. I let the call ring out. Once, then twice, 3 times. Then silence. I exhaled, placed the phone back down. A few seconds later, another buzz. A message. Are you awake? I looked at it blankly and then locked the screen. No response. Not yet. 3:04 a.m. The next vibration came, breaking the hush. I sighed, turned to check it. I just got home. Can we talk? I glanced toward the door. Right on cue, the faint creak of the front door closing, followed by the click of her heels across the floor. She was back, and unsure. Good. I didn't rush. Stretched, sat up slowly, and after a pause, typed a single word. Busy. The same word she'd used with me before. Short, detached, just sharp enough to leave her unsettled. I watched the typing bubble blink on and off. Then it stopped. Then again, busy with what? I could picture her standing there, maybe in the kitchen, staring down at her phone, her irritation mounting. She expected to find me asleep, passive, waiting. But that version of me was gone. I set the phone aside again, leaned back against the pillows, and shut my eyes. Let her feel the silence this time. Then came the next text. I don't understand why you're acting like this. That made me laugh. I took a sip from my coffee, looked her in the eye. Acting like what? She gestured vaguely, frustration breaking through. Like you don't even care. I rested my hands on the edge of the counter and leaned in slightly. Should I? Her eyes widened, just a flicker, caught off guard by the directness. In that brief reaction I saw it, the slip, the uncertainty. She hadn't expected this. She thought I'd be wounded, maybe even livid. She was waiting for questions, demands, accusations. But I wasn't giving her any of it. She exhaled, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know what you're trying to prove. I'm not proving anything, I cut in. Not anymore, Lana. She blinked. The steadiness in my tone clearly threw her. I just finally see things as they are. Her brows drew together. See what? I offered her a slight, hollow smile. That I've been the only one truly here in this marriage. She went still. And in that instant, I knew. She felt it. The shift. The balance had tilted. She wasn't in control anymore. The reins had slipped from her fingers. Lana clung to her coffee mug like it might keep her steady. For years, she'd been the navigator, steering us through chaos of her own making. And I had followed, patient, forgiving, always patching holes in the hull, even when I felt like I was bailing water out alone. But something gave way last night. Something inside me changed. Now it was her turn to sit with the discomfort, to live in the unanswered. I let the silence hang between us, sipping my coffee like I had all the time in the world. I wasn't going to be the one to break it. I wasn't about to plead for answers she clearly wasn't ready to give. If she needed to wrestle with it, let her. After a long silence, she finally spoke. I don't understand why you're acting like this, she said quietly, setting her mug down on the counter. In what way? I asked, feigning ignorance. She sighed deeply and rubbed her temples. Like none of this matters to you. Like you're completely detached. A bitter chuckle slipped out before I could stop it. That's ironic, especially coming from you. Her eyes darted up, confused and defensive. What's that supposed to mean? I tilted my head slightly, watching her. Lana, you walked out last night without a second thought. You knew exactly what you were doing. You chose to leave, and how it would affect me clearly didn't matter. So tell me, why does it upset you that I decided to leave too? Her mouth opened, like she had something locked and loaded, but nothing came. She closed it again, lips pressed tight, scanning for a way to reclaim control. But for once, she had no cards to play. She crossed her arms and leaned against the counter. "You're just twisting everything," she said after a beat. I let out another dry laugh, louder this time. "Twisting it? You made your move, Lana. And now you're dealing with what came after." She exhaled sharply, turned away, and dragged her fingers through her hair. "You're impossible," she muttered under her breath. I shrugged, unbothered. Maybe. Or maybe I've finally stopped faking it. Silence fell again, not as a pause but like a heavy curtain dropping between us. She started tapping the counter with her fingers, clearly on edge, probably trying to figure out how to spin things so she'd be the victim again. But that script wasn't working anymore. Not today. When she turned back around, her expression had shifted, cold and unreadable. "I didn't do anything wrong." I offered a faint, lopsided smile. "Did I accuse you of anything?" Her eyes narrowed. "You're trying to make me feel guilty." I took another slow sip of my coffee, didn't flinch. "If you feel guilty, that's on you, not me." She scoffed and pushed away from the counter, stomping into the living room. A second later, I heard the muffled sound of her sinking into the couch, followed by a long, irritated sigh. Good. Let her sit with it. I wasn't going to run after her anymore. The dynamic had shifted. Now it was her turn to sit in the unknown, to feel the weight of uncertainty. She sat stiffly, arms crossed, eyes locked on the window like she expected some revelation to come through the glass. But there was nothing left to clear up. No more explanations to give. And for the first time in ages, I felt a flicker of peace. I finished the last of my coffee, rinsed the mug, and leaned against the sink, watching her from across the room. The woman I used to trust above anyone else, my partner, my safe place, was now just a stranger who looked familiar. Eventually, she turned toward me. Her face had softened, her guard lowered a little. "Spencer," she said, her voice tentative, almost hesitant. I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" She looked like she was about to say something real, maybe offer an apology, maybe ask me not to go. But the words never came, and that silence told me everything. She wasn't sorry, not truly. What she felt wasn't remorse, it was fear. Fear of losing the life she had grown used to. Fear of losing me, not because she loved me, but because I was the safety net. But I was already gone. I picked up my keys from the counter and walked toward the door. She sat up straighter, alarm creeping into her expression. "Where are you going?" she asked. I gave a small, dry smile. "Does it matter?" For the first time, I wasn't chained to her indecision or carrying the weight of a relationship she kept letting drift. I wasn't waiting anymore for her to recognize my value. I knew my worth. She just wasn't the one who could see it. The morning air greeted me as I stepped outside, crisp and clear, brushing against my skin like a promise. I didn't have a destination yet, but I knew one thing. I was moving forward. And I wasn't turning back. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.